There we go.
Perfect. Welcome, friends. So we have Cassidy from Keene ISD, I assume. And what grade level do you teach, Cassidy?
I teach ninth grade bio.
Ninth grade bio. And Miss Carrier from Spring. Miss Carrier, are you a district administrator?
Yes, I'm the secondary curriculum director.
So nice to meet you. Oscar,
Nice meeting you.
where are you from and what do you teach or do there?
I am from UT Tyler University Academy. I'm an
Oh,
instructional
fabulous.
coach. Currently,
And
I'm not
what
taking any classes.
what grade levels do you support?
Uh, Biology, eighth grade science, and fifth grade science.
Fabulous. Thanks for being here. Is it Eureka
Urieta.
Yeah.
or Rieta? Yes.
Thank you.
Eureka, are you with us? If you could hear me, you can unmute and let us
Yes,
know
I'm here.
where are you from and what do you do there?
I'm a fifth grade science teacher in Burton, Texas.
In Burton, Texas. And am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is it Eureka?
Jerica, it's my last name.
Jerica, Ms. Jerica. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. The sign in is right here on your screen. It is also in the chat. I'm going to put it in there one more time. If you sign, please sign in. It'll allow you to be in the drawing at the end of our time together.
Guys, thank y'all so much for joining us. We know that spring break is right around the corner, and Star is also right around the corner. So between the two, there's a break and a holy cow, Star's around the corner. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm gonna leave you in the trusting hands of Mr. Tony Zahn, and he will take you the rest of the way. But thank you once again for spending some of your time with us this afternoon.
If you haven't been in one of our learning lounges before, I'll remind you or let you know that they're divided into two pieces. There's a share topic and a learn topic. Our share topic today is students tracking their PLPs. So this resource, and I'll put the link in the chat for you. We'll create a copy for you so that you could customize it for yourself. Is a PLP student tracker, right? So when students are working on their PLP, it's a little mysterious for a teacher, right? You're like, I can get in there and look at their PLP, but I don't really know what they're working on. This will provide them and you a means of tracking their work, right? To give them some ownership, give them some accountability. In that, they can record the date, the strand, what TEKS they're working on, the topic, and then they could do a checkbox for what the activity is. Recall that students get 3 opportunities to earn an 80, and the system only records their highest grade. So you don't get to see all their attempts. I would have my students record their attempts right here. Click right here in this if it's a no graded assignment, and then something for next steps. Next steps. I really have it. I'm ready to move on. I don't really have it. I need some help from my teacher. So this can be used for students to set their own goals for their PLP and track their PLP work. You can choose to use it electronically, or you could print it out and have students put it in their notebook, whatever works for you. Any questions or comments or ideas about the PLP Progress Student Data Tracker? Our learn topic today is about small group instruction. So if you're a star tested grade, you are in the midst, you're getting ready to be in the midst of balancing, finishing up tier one instruction, depending on your scope and sequence. I work with some districts that are done or almost done. I work with some districts like, no way, we're done. Everybody's in a different place. So you could be balancing, finishing up your tier one instruction and working on star review. If you're working on Star Review and you're using our system, you're balancing a lot of balls because you have data that says, here's some things I need to teach whole group. You have data that says, here's some things that I need to teach small group. And wait a minute, here's some things I need to spiral as well. So this piece is going to kind of provide you some support and really a minute to stop and think about your practices to see if there's anything I share here today that could help you balance all that chaos between now and the STAR test. So I'm going to talk about two different models of instruction, and they're both equally good. For me, I like to mix them up and use both. In both of them, there's a teacher station. In this model, we have 4 different stations the students rotate through. Now, it could be they rotate through all 4 stations in one day. It could be that this happens over 4 days and they do one station a day. You get to decide what's in those stations and how long those are and what works for you. There's another model where there's a teacher station and all my students are working on their PLP. Remember, PLP was automatically graded, automatically assigned, automatically graded. It's independent, individual work for your students. I like to mix it up because I don't want my students sitting on a computer doing computer work every day, all day, too long. They'll lose interest, they'll become disengaged, there'll be behavior problems. So for that reason, I sometimes do PLPs, I sometimes do stations, I sometimes do a combination, depending on what my students' needs are and whether I need to break it up. What is a non-negotiable for me is that every time my students are working on PLPs or going through stations for STAR review, I am pulling small groups because I will never have enough time to pull all my small groups. Here's some best practices for small group instruction. If you like them, take a screenshot of this or a picture with your phone. Small groups work when you set expectations. 2 big expectations. Make sure your kids know who is coming to small group and what they need to bring with them. In my classroom, when I was in the class, I had a place on my board that said, here's the small groups, here's the students in this small group, here's the order I'm going to pull them, and for each group, here's what you need to bring. I also had expectations for what my students who were working had to do and meet so that I could focus on those students. And one thing that I did in my classroom was when I had stations or I was pulling small groups, I assigned a student leader. It also depends on what grade you teach. I think you could do this as low as 5th grade. I assigned a student leader, and that student leader did whatever the work was. But when another student had a question or a need, that was the student they went to. That student would field all the questions, field all the needs as best they could, and would report back to me any issues or problems or things that I needed to know about after we were done with small groups. I found that to be helpful so that my students who were working independently still had a layer of support, but it freed me up to focus on my small group. I like to keep my groups small, 3 to 5. The higher the need of the student, the smaller the group. I like that instruction to be targeted a specific TEK and it's a short period of time, never usually more than 30 minutes, as short as maybe 10 minutes. I build in check for understanding and metacognition throughout. When I'm pulling a small group, that is my opportunity to check for understanding one-on-one. That's my opportunity to hear the thinking in their head. And students don't think out loud very well. So I have to model that for them and then expect them to do it, right? I Students think that the smart people read a question and pick an answer. STAR questions are not written like that. Smart people read a question, think about it, analyze it, read the answer choices, analyze every answer choice, and we have an internal dialogue with ourselves all the way through that. I want to teach my kids how to have that internal dialogue. One, because it'll get them to the right answer, and two, if they're having that internal dialogue out loud, I can find problems and correct misconceptions. Metacognition is so important in small groups. Organize whatever works for you. For me, I had a folder with kids' names for each group. Whatever handouts I needed were in that group. I had bins for each. If I needed materials or manipulatives, I had all that organized ahead of time so I could maximize my time. And then you always want to assess mastery. In my perfect world, I would assess mastery right then. I did a check for understanding them, but I wouldn't say it was really an assessment for mastery. I would send them back to whole group with an assignment for assessment and would circle back to check on that. Now, the downside is it added an extra step for me. The upside is they didn't need me for that assessment. I needed that time for me to go to my next small group. You do what works for you. Any questions or comments or any best practices around small group instruction that you have from your experience that you want to share with the group?
What's available for small group instruction through Summit K-12?
I am so glad you asked because that is coming up next. Let's first talk about our data sources. To pull small groups, our primary report from our STAR Mastery was our Student TEKS Mastery report. If you were in our last session last month or in one of our PD sessions, you saw this report, and this report shows every standard across the top and all your students. I can look at this to say, ooh, like, look, let's pretend I have a small class, 5B. I only have one student, Pearl, that didn't master this. That's one student, a small group pullout. These all did good, right? So this is how I use this data to determine my small groups. I also, while my students are working on their PLP, have to look at my Concept Boosters report where their grades for their PLP go and say, wait a minute, 510B, Hannah Kim needs to be pulled out because she did not pass 510B. Her PLP is not giving her something else. So I have two data sources to figure out who I need to pull. Now, on to your question, Jurika, which is what can I use? There are lots of choices. You could the final answer is whatever you want. I have 5 options for you. They are not the only 5 options, but I didn't want to overwhelm you with options. So here are 5 options that I would use in small group pullout, mostly in order of need. First place I would go is I would go to my STAR review section and my teacher lessons for STAR readiness, and I would pull a collaborative activity from the STAR review lesson guide. Here are 3 examples. This one's a mini investigation. This one is a card sort. This one is an argumentation activity. If you're familiar with Paige-Keeley probes, it's similar to that. It provides them with some data or a stimulus, and then it asks them to take a stance on that or agree or disagree with someone. To get to those activities, here's where you're going to find them. In the teacher resources piece on your STAR review portion, remember you have a lesson for every single standard that is testable. I'm going to go to the reporting category. I'm going to go to the standard. I'm going to go to the lesson guide. And right here, I have for this one collaborative activity, stations for electric circuits. I'm going to scroll down to here. These are my stations. Now I'm pulling a small group. I'm probably not going to do 5 stations, but I could do 1. So I'm going to come here to my teacher guide, and there's everything that I need for my stations. If I'm going to do this as a pull-up, I'm probably going to pick 1 station, maybe 2, it depends. So that's where you will find your activities for this option 1. Any questions about option 1? It's my first go-to because it was designed for STAR mastery. Option 2. Option 2, I pull up an interactive e-poster and I use it as a basis for my discussion with a small group. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to say, okay, somebody look at this. What are we looking at here? A food web. Okay, somebody tell me something about the food web from what you see here. Okay, what direction is the energy going in? What would happen if we got rid of this bird right here? What would happen? I'm going to use it as a basis for a discussion with that small group. I'm going to ask them questions. They're going to answer questions, but this is my launching point. To get to your interactive e-poster, you're still here in your STAR mastery piece where we pulled up this lesson guide, but instead of pulling up the lesson guide over here in the left navigation bar, we're going to go to interactive e-poster, and here it is. Remember, it exists in 2 ways. I could pull up the blank one if that's what I prefer. There's a blank one that I could use, or there's a completed one that I could use. You can also click on any of the yellow pieces and just focus on this. This is a complete circuit. This particular one, my style would be to have all the stuff to do this. Say, great, here it is. I want to see you make a complete circuit with it now. Any questions about option 2? Option 3, I'm going to show a TEKS lesson video, but I'm just not going to click on it and walk away. I'm going to pause it where it needs pausing. I'm going to stop and ask questions. I'm going to check for understanding. At the end of every TEKS lesson video, there are 2 things. There's a check for understanding question, and here's the check for understanding for this 510C, and there's a vocabulary review. I'm going to pause at both of those and have kids answer that question, have kids give me other examples of that vocabulary, maybe even have kids open up their notebook and write that vocabulary word down or do a fur model with that vocabulary. But all of that's going to be launched from my TEKS lesson video. To get to your TEKS lesson videos, you're going to go to your My Course page, and this time you're going to go to the core curriculum at the top. This first button is Teaks Lesson Videos. You're going to click on Teaks Lesson Videos. You're going to click on Teaks Lesson Videos again. You're going to select your reporting category. Now I'm going to click play here to show this from my computer in my small group, but I'm also going to assign it because I want my kids to be able to go back and watch it again later. Any questions
Are
about?
those the same videos that are on the Concept Mastery?
They are. They are the same videos from Concept Mastery. If you're looking at the Concept Mastery videos under the Teaks lesson, under the star review, they may be a little bit shorter. So if you want a shorter one, you could pull from that Concept Mastery table for those shorter videos.
Okay. My kids have done the Concept Mastery, so they've seen some of these videos already. So that's why I was curious.
Absolutely. This, though, remember, I'm with a small group. So it's okay if I redo something. They've already done it, but they haven't mastered it. And I'm not just sitting them, having them sit there and watch it. I'm pausing and having a discussion with that small group of 3 to 5 students. Option four. Option four, read an ebook together. Pull up pull up the questions that go with that ebook, the assessment, and use that as an opportunity not only to answer the question and get to the content, but to model and have kids practice test taking skills. So that's kind of a 2-for-1. Here's how you're going to get to your ebooks. I'm going to come up here to the top under science literacy. You do need to know that there's not an ebook for every standard, so check first. I'm going to click under differentiated science literacy. Here's the ebook. I'm going to assign this to students, but I'm also going to pull it up and we're going to read it together and we're going to talk about it, right? I'm not just, these are students that need it, that need me to walk with them every step of the way. I'm not just assigning this and saying, do this, right? We're doing it together. I could click on this and it could read out loud. I could read some out loud. Students could read some out loud. It depends on my students and my group and my style. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to also, especially if I'm elementary, going to point out some of those text features, which is not only good for their language arts, but it's also good for their understanding. Right? I'm going to show them how I read a book. I don't skip over the definitions. I don't skip over the pictures. I read it all. So I'm going to take all the opportunity to squeeze all the good out of that I can. Again, with the quiz, I'm going to assign the quiz. It's short, it's relatively low level, to be honest, so it gives them an opportunity for some success. But I'm going to say, okay, here's the question. Well, they're just going to pick out the answer, but I'm going to challenge them. Let's go back to the book. What can we find proof in this book, right? We're teaching kids science is about proof. So this also supports it supports their science content and their thinking because I want them to know the answer is here. I want them to be able to find the answer. Remember, you're pulling students that have been unsuccessful in the past. I'm also building that idea that in science, it's not just what you think, it's what you can prove. Questions or comments about option 4, teacher-led group using an ebook? Okay. Option 5, do a virtual lab, do it together. So sometimes, like especially like the electricity one, that would be a really good one to do a virtual lab on. Let's see if we have a virtual lab on electricity. We don't have one for everything. Again, we're modeling, we're encouraging out loud thinking, we're doing it together, just like we were helping them do homework if we're helping our kid do homework, right? We don't want to do it for them, but we want to provide them a whole lot of support and we want them to think out loud. We don't want to give them permission to not think about it and master it. Let's go to our virtual labs. I'm going back to my courses. I'm going to my first button at the top, Teaks Lessons and Simulations. I'm going to simulations. I wanted to see if we had one. Am I in 5th grade? I am. Do we have insulators and conductors? I don't know if we have one on circuits. Here's one on circuits. I'm going to click here. Now, I haven't played with this before, so I don't know what this one is. You would certainly play with it before. Let's look at this lab, but we're going to pull this up. We're going to figure out how it works ourselves as a teacher. We're not putting a handout. We're not giving this to kids to say, complete this handout. This is about us experimenting together to master that standard, right? I'd show them how it worked. Then I would say, okay, what do you think we should do next? And I would do it. And I would say, okay, now I would turn the computer to one of the kids. You try it. This is about you having the opportunity to see what they're doing and see what they're thinking is and correct mistakes right there. Questions about option 5. We got one more option. Option 6. Especially when you know these kids, they know the science, they're just not transferring it to the test. That happens. I taught lots of kids that I felt that way. For those kids, I would pull them in small groups and I would make an assessment using the assessment bank, various different types of questions, and we would do them together so that I could model my out loud thinking. And I would have 2 of every question type. I'm going to model my out loud thinking on one, and we're going to do it together. The next one, now it's your turn. I want you to think out loud. Um, and we would all those test taking strategies, right? The first thing I do is I read the stimulus. I don't even look at the question. I think about the stimulus, list to all the science words that are popping into my head as I look at this. I am not worried about the right answer yet. I'm worried about the stimulus, right? Our system of education has trained kids to think that the person with the right answer quickest is the smartest. We need to undo that and say, we are throwing all that away. We're focusing on your thinking. With good thinking, you will get the right answer. And of course, to get to the assessment bank, you're going to click on concept mastery. Woo-hoo-hoo, not from there, we're not. Well, we're going to log back in since I did not click the right button. You're going to click on concept mastery, and there is the assessment bank, and you're going to build an assessment using the questions for whatever standards that student needs to close gaps on. And you're going to get 2 for 1, both content and test taking skills. Let's talk about options for assessment. You've done a small group. You may be good. You might just check it off and say they have it. You're the teacher, you're in charge. But if you're not good and you want to do an assessment to make sure that you've closed that gap, my favorite for for 5th grade is the performance task. It's in core curriculum. Every lesson guide has a performance task at the bottom. Right now, they only exist through 5th grade. I don't know when the middle schools and high schools will be done, so I'm not promising that. That's my favorite. You can also use assessment 1 or assessment 2 from the core curriculum. You're going up to the top and you're looking at concept mastery, or you could build a custom assessment from the assessment bank. So those are some options for assessing after you've done that small group instruction. Let me share this small group instruction planning document with you. If you have a way of doing this, you do what works for you. If you love this, you're going to have a copy that is your very own to adapt or throw away. It is in the chat, but this is a document. Well, not from there. If you choose to use it, and there's one for 5-8 and a separate one for biology, only because your strands are different. Date, strand, TEKS, topic, what activities are you going to do for that small group? What supplies or materials do you need for that small group? Will you have an assessment activity? What is it? What is your class period section or homeroom? And who are the kids that are going to be in that small group? A little box here if you want to say check, you're good. If you don't check that box, then you know that kid needs to be pulled again for a small group because they still don't have it, right? In a perfect world, check, 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 they're all going to have it. But you know, in the real world, you're going to have somebody that needs to be pulled another time. So this is one sheet where you can manage all of that planning for those small groups in one place. If you love it, use it. If you have another way of managing that, then you do what works for you. Okay, let's talk about any questions about small group. The data that you use to decide who you're pulling up to your small group table, and the resources that you have at your disposal to use in that small group. Any questions about those pieces? Let's now talk about independent stations. While you're doing small group, here's some best practices for independent stations. I already talked about this. I like to assign an advanced learner to kind of answer questions. I make sure that if there are stations that I meet with that student and that that student knows what happens at each station. And this student doesn't just monitor, the student does their work, but if a student raises their hand, they're the person that will answer the question. I make sure that there are clear written instructions for every station. I make sure that the work is reviewed. We're not learning new stuff. I ensure that if there's something they need in the LMS, that I assigned it to everybody. Clear expectations. Make sure you set expectations. Are they working individually? Are they working as a group? Are they allowed to talk while they're working? What is the noise level supposed to be? If you're using our Classcade product, you can monitor that with our Classcade product. I mix up groups. I never like to keep them in the group with the same kids all the time, right? Because then it becomes like a sibling sort of situation. You're with the same kids all the time and they make you crazy. Build accountability for each station. There should be something that they do, finish, or complete. I like to track students, which students were at which station. I would do that with a sign-in sheet at each station. This is, here's the station name. You put your period number, your homeroom, and you sign your name so that I know what station you were at. Figure out how long do they spend at each station. Not all stations are created equal, and I don't stress about that. And I don't stress about that because I say, if you are done with your station before the time to rotate to another station, the rest of your time is spent working on PLP. Data sources for independent stations. We could determine based on the practice test and PLP report that there are some strands that we need to spiral. So this might be just review. We're going to review some strand 1 stuff because it was a while ago. Or we're going to pepper in some strand 3 stuff to keep it up there because we know there's going to be so much stuff on strand 3. So that's one data source for you. Another data source, your STAR class review plan report. Those items that come up at the top, you're probably going to do whole class instruction, direct teach by you, but you can pick some of the things here under approaches or even under meets to bump kids up to the next level to use for your independent stations. Again, the first place that I'm going to go, my collaborative activities. Like, but wait a minute, we did that in small group. Fabulous, but your kids you pulled in small group are not going to do all those stations, right? Because they're going to be with small group for one of those stations. So you could do that same activity that you're doing in small group as an independent station with your kids who are doing it for review. You can also do the ebook and the quiz. The difference here is you just assigned it to them and they're working on it independently. Another option, you can do a virtual field investigation. You would have to download the PowerPoint. It is not assignable. So you would have to assign that PowerPoint through whatever your current assigning system is. You could email it to students. You could assign it through Google Classroom. You could assign it through Canvas. However you would normally give a student a PowerPoint deck. And you would print out the handout. They could work through that. That PowerPoint slide deck walks them through step by step. The video clips are built into the slides, so they just click the play button right there. It is very student friendly, and it would walk them through an entire mini phenomenon. Station 4, assign a cross-curricular passage and a vocabulary mastery. I would assign at least those two together because those are relatively short assignments, which is the only reason I have 2 of those together there. Station 5, maybe one of their rotations is at this station, all you have to do is work on your PLP. And here's something else to consider. These stations don't have to be physical locations in the room that students move to. They could just be stations on the board, and students are working in their seats at different things at a different time, whatever works for you. It depends how you want them to work. If I want them to work independently, then maybe I do that. If I want them to work collaboratively, then maybe I move them from group to group. Here is that a student PLP tracker. I would strongly encourage you to use this, especially if it's going to be one of your stations. I'm going to put that link in the chat for you as well. And this document, you'd make you share you can share this very same link with your kids because they would make their own copy, okay? This has the date. Did I already show this? I was talking about small groups. They're similar. This is the strand, the teak, the description. These are all the activities that they could have. They just do a check mark for which one they had today. A place to record all 3 attempts on their grades. Remember, they get 3 tries and it keeps an 80. If you want to know their other grades, this is a great place to do that. If it's just something without a score, like a ebook or a video, unto themselves, they come with assignments, but they're separate. They could click right here and then goals and next steps. I like this piece because this is where they could communicate to me, hey, I don't have this yet, or I need help, or I really have it, or my goal for next time is to finish more than 2 assignments, whatever. So this you use for their next steps and their goals. What you could print this out if you want to put it in a student notebook. For me, my personal side would be to keep it electronic. I would have my students create their copy, share it with me. I would put that link in a document in a spreadsheet that had a tab for every student and had one for every student listed there. So when I wanted to check, all I had to do is pull up a spreadsheet, click on my Mrs. Jones's homeroom. I have all my kids. I have a link to every one of their trackers. I just click on it and it pulls up their tracker. I could see what they did. I could see if they need any help. So it builds in accountability for them and it helps you a little bit because you can go in and look at every student PLP, but that's not very easy to do, right? This can get real quickly, student self-report, how are they doing and how much work are they getting done? Questions about any of those options you have for independent stations? You're not limited to those. Anything that we have, you could turn into a station. I'm just trying to give you some ideas. If you need to remember how to get to a resource, this document is your essentials document. I'll put it in the chat as well. You're like, Tony, you showed me all this stuff. How am I going to remember how to get there? At the bottom of this document, you'll also find a link to my YouTube channel that you can also, and there are also YouTube videos linked in that document. So if this is your go-to, I don't know how to find ebooks, this is your go-to, or anything in the system. Okay. This document is for you a takeaway. Let me try to not click on that. Give me a second. I'm trying to copy that to put in the chat. 10% Zion. You got to be smarter than. This is it was going to be a 1-pager, but it took 2. So it's a 2-pager that summarizes what I shared with you today. Stand by and I'll pull it up. It looks like this. Small group instruction. The first part focuses on what you're doing at your teacher station. Those are the options that I shared with you. They're the options I share with you for assessment. Here's a link to the small group planning document if you want that. This focuses on what happens in independent work time while you're doing small groups. Those are the options that I shared for independent stations. Here is the link to the essentials that can help you find resources. And here is a link to the PLP student tracker. So just in a nutshell, that very last link has everything that I shared with you today and everything to help you maximize teacher stations and independent stations using our resources. What questions do you have for me?
I just want to say thank you for sharing all the resources. I think it's just a matter of sit down and choose whatever works for each teacher and just
Absolutely right.
have so many
There-
options. Yeah.
I put my email address in the chat. Please, if you're working and you need a thinking partner, it would be my honor and pleasure. Our next Learning Lounge is April 2nd. So you can mark your calendars for that. This link will get you to the page with all the links to attend the Learning Lounge. Also, if you haven't joined our Facebook, email me and I'll send you a link to our Facebook. We also communicate via Facebook. We would love for you to join that.